We're meeting a very important person today. It's our very important person. Hi, Leni! Then show that all.
Murag bago manigat. So proud. Thank you, Lord.
So we met up with our very important person, our VIP, our cousin, Ruth. There, okay. So we will be asking her questions. And so we want to talk about, since it's very important and it's almost gonna happen. Why do you think it's so important as a, not just like as a Filipino, because, you know, I think more of like as a Christian, or, you know, why is it an important thing to do?
In my perspective, me exercising my right to vote and me going out of my way and spending a little bit extra just to be able to cast that vote really is putting into practice loving my neighbor. I think it's easy to tell myself that it's just one vote and it's probably not going to matter in the grand scheme of things. But then this is me doing my best to think about what the country needs. And when I say country, I don't think of like the state in general, but I think of the people that could be affected by new policies, new programs, and new leadership. And I think it's important that when we think of them and we think of what they need and what they deserve, and this is an exercise of love and service also. So it's like something that we can do to bring about change and to cast our vote.
That's so nice. And also, Ruth is a lawyer, and so she knows how important policies are, how important the change of leaderships are. And so that's very important even for not just as a Filipino but as a Christian. You know, it's a beautiful thing when we get to love our neighbor. What about like those people who are fighting online? I mean, it's very crazy right now. For sure, by the time you're watching this, it's very chaotic, and there are friends that, you know, have a specific candidate that they vouch for. So what do you think should be our disposition, and how are we supposed to react, or what our attitudes should be online?
I think it's important that the biblical standards of how we should treat other people, especially how we treat fellow Christians, should still apply even when it comes to discussing politics. I know it's easy to get carried away, especially because these are things that we often feel so passionate about, and these are important things. These are things that are also worth discussing, that are worth putting effort into. These are conversations that are worth having. But it's important that in the course of discussing what we are passionate about, that we do not sin. So I think that's the first thing, that to avoid sinning throughout this campaign season with the elections, and that the Bible commands us to be accountable for our words. Like, we're accountable to God with how we use our words, and to love one another. I think that's important. To view other people with love, to refrain from judgment, refrain from accusing, and really be careful in what we say. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't speak up, but I'm saying that in the manner by which we communicate our views, we should ensure that God is glorified.
Yeah.
And God will be glorified when I say this, and when I say it in this manner. So don't sin.
Don't sin, please. I mean, what do you think about social media now, with everything that's been being posted? I mean, there are videos, there are infographics and all that, and we already know that there's a huge chunk of fake news going around. So how is it important that we should also be responsible with those kind of information? I mean, should we be invested in those? Should we be reading those? Should we be sharing them? What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are fake news isn't just a matter of, I know it's a term that's easily thrown around, like, oh, that's fake news or this is fake news, but what's at stake is truth. And God is a God of truth, and God is for truth. So fake news really is something that, as Christians, we really should acknowledge is something that does not glorify God. It's a form of sin, it's a form of evil, and it's something that we should not just avoid, but really also actively participate in making sure that the information we share is accurate, that the information we share comes from credible sources, and that we do not become a pawn or we do not become involved in sharing untruth. Because again, at the end of the day, in whatsoever we do, we should make sure that it brings honor and glory to God. And God is not pleased when truth is compromised. So it's important that I'm not saying that you should support this particular candidate. So it's not about who to vote, who you're voting for, or who you're supporting, but it really is just about making sure that whenever we say something, it's aligned with truth. Go, like, ask me the question.
The question is, do you think that Christians should be apolitical or silent or distant when it comes to politics?
I don't think Christians should be apolitical, but I also don't say that all Christians should speak up in a particular way. I think we all have to really seek God through this election season and really seek guidance from Him on how we should vote for. And ideally, we really should be invested in doing our research, having conversations with people, gaining wisdom, and discussing these things with other people.
So being a professional, being a lawyer, and being a Christian lawyer at that, do you think that it's important that the one who sits on the highest form of a public servant should be a Christian? And if not, why so? Or what are your views on that matter?
I think it definitely is a plus, and it gives me much hope if the person who would be president of the Philippines is someone who serves God and who holds values that are important to holding public office, like integrity, honesty, selflessness, and those are values that are exhibited if you have a genuine relationship with Christ. However, I wouldn't say that it's necessary or that we should automatically disqualify or discount people who do not share our faith. If you read the Bible, we can see how God uses leaders who did not worship Him, but He is still able, because He's in control, He's still able to use them to accomplish His will. Like we see Nebuchadnezzar, we see all these foreign kings who God was able to use and over whose power God was still sovereign. So I think that it's okay to prefer someone who shares the same faith, but ultimately it's not something that we should consider as a disqualificatory matter. We should look down on someone or on a particular candidate because they share a different faith. However, I also think that this shouldn't mean that we shouldn't look at character. So regardless of who you vote for, I think looking at the candidate's character, his track record, practices of integrity, potential practices of dishonesty are extremely important, and those are things that you should consider or think twice about before casting your vote.
The question is, do you think that Christians should be apolitical or silent or distant when it comes to politics?
I don't think Christians should be apolitical, but I also don't say that all Christians should speak up in a particular way. I think we all have to really seek God through this election season and really seek guidance from Him on how we should vote for. And ideally, we really should be invested in doing our research, having conversations with people, gaining wisdom, and discussing these things with other people. I wouldn't go as far as to say that if you're silent, that there's something wrong with you as a Christian. So I think in certain cases, being silent at a particular time about a particular issue could also be an extension of love and grace, especially if the person who wants to discuss things with you isn't really open or just wants to engage you in an argument. So I think in that way, you're not necessarily apolitical. I think you're just exercising wisdom and discretion and choosing to restrain your thoughts. So Christians shouldn't be apolitical, but I believe that Christians should also know when to be silent and when to speak up. And when you speak up, you should also ask guidance from God when it comes to how you should speak up and what you should say. So,
A reminder for me.
Yeah. So I think being apolitical might, I think it's a reflection really of not caring about what the things that other people go through. So I think that's something that's an attitude we shouldn't have.
Yeah.
But at the same time, being apolitical, being silent doesn't mean that you're apolitical. So care for your neighbor, have love and respect for your neighbor, have hope for this country and what God can do in this country, and at the same time seek guidance from God on what conversations to have, when to engage, when to stay silent, when to hold your tongue, and when to speak up and how we should speak up, so that at the end of the day, regardless of who is president, regardless of who sits in Malacanang, we know who sits in the throne of heaven, right? And having this exercise of trust with God and saying that it's not that God will really still be in control no matter what happens, and we remain as vessels and we remain as servants of the one who sits in the seat that really matters.
These two, John and Ruthie, are actually going where?
Back to Cebu, flying to Cebu to
Why?
vote. So it's the most expensive vote ever. It's going to cost us a little bit extra money to cast that vote, but we're both making the trip. Thank you so much for having me on your vlog, The
Yay,
Quintanas.
of
I've been
course.
dying.
I've been dying, grabe.
I've been dying to be on this vlog.
So that's Ruthie.
Wait, we should take a photo again and nag-chaperone ko ninyo.
Bita! So this
bita.
happened before.
It's 2 a.m. in the morning. Proginosko coffee. Thank you for the coffee, our first YouTube gift. Thank you, it's really good.
Hey, I just got home from the airport, and we brought John to the airport because he's going home to Cebu for a few days for the elections. And we prayed about it, and we really sought the Lord whether we should make this important decision, and we thank the Lord that He has given us that wisdom, to really exercise our right to vote as Filipinos and also as Christians, like loving your neighbor. So we hope that you were able to learn something from this video, and if you want to get a more in-depth biblical perspective on the elections and voting, I really highly recommend that you watch and listen to Pastor Jurem's exhortation during the prayer meeting at Solid Deo Gloria's Shepherd's Call Church, Christian Church in Davao, and you can watch that and also pray because it's a prayer meeting. So after that, there's a prayer. So even if it's not live, we can all come together in prayer for the nation. And at the same time, if you want to have a more objective perspective on government qualifications on presidency and vice presidency, etc., I think we could recommend this other video linked down below. And so if you'd also want our last but not least recommendation for you is, if not really a recommendation but really an invitation for you to come and pray and worship with us the night before the election. So we're premiering our worship to the Lord this tomorrow on Sunday, the night before the election. So if you want to join us, that would be premiered on our Cantanas music page or YouTube channel, and we'd be very glad for you to join us in just, humbling ourselves before the Lord and just pleading before Him, because ultimately He is God and He is God of all. So that is it for us, for me, as of this moment. Lord, heal our land, and may God bless the Philippines. Bye.
And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. For those God foreknew, He also predestined to be conformed to the likeness of His Son, and that He might be the firstborn among many brethren. And those He predestined, He also called. And those He called, He also justified. And those He justified, He also glorified.